Hello everyone, this video is on listening and what actually happens when we're listening. You may have heard, oh, it's really important to be a good listener and it's really essential in therapy or with friends or when learning things or listening to teachers to be able to listen and absorb information without judgment is an important thing to say because you can't really listen and absorb the information and the subtler levels of the information if there's judgment. And so you can't really be a good listener if you're judging, if your belief system is on autopilot, thinking, how am I going to respond? I need to say this or that to change that person's mind, or they're getting it wrong, or they shouldn't be doing that, or they made an error here, or what are they after? What's the agenda? So, in order to really listen, we have to drop all judgment. You cannot listen if you're judging the other person. You cannot listen if you have an agenda. You cannot listen if your belief systems, likes, dislikes, preferences for an outcome in a situation, wanting to manipulate the other person is just running on autopilot, or maybe not even on autopilot, consciously doing it because it bursts the listening bubble. Judgment bursts the listening bubble. Wanting to have a specific outcome bursts the listening bubble. Liking or disliking what the person is saying bursts the listening bubble. And there is this bubble, and it's a listening bubble. It's a sacred space. It's a space where change occurs without manipulation. People often think I need to force myself into a conversation. I need to create an outcome. I need to maintain my agenda, know what I'm going to say next. That all bursts this sacred listening space. And the most powerful thing you can do for yourself and the other person is to respect and maintain the sanctity of that listening space. Drop all of your limits, all of your agendas. Be present, be there with the person. Don't jump in, don't interrupt, don't have your agenda burst the bubble. And what happens is this cosmic intelligence is invited in. So when you drop all of the things that maybe your ego wants to do, or your fears want to do, or your beliefs want to do, if you drop all of that, then this cosmic intelligence can enter this listening space and change just naturally and spontaneously occurs both within yourself and within the other person. And isn't that miraculous? Because you're not efforting, you're not trying to convince the other person to see it your way. There's no agenda. And what happens is you have what's going on verbally, and then you have what's going on non-verbally. And the non-verbal listening space has the cosmic intelligence, has the ability to upgrade, to change belief systems naturally without doing it on a verbal level. You don't have to win an argument on a verbal level. You never win anything through arguing, through shaming another person, through getting angry and irritated and thinking, I'm going to say this next or they got it wrong. There's a real compassion and openness and limitlessness to the listening space. If we meditate, we're in a listening space. when we're in the present moment and accepting what's going on, we're in a listening space. It's so important to learn to listen because you dehumanize people when you don't listen to them. You can leave a person feeling very unseen or very judged or shamed or like they're doing something wrong. And people have to be allowed to just vent, to say things incorrectly, to just throw things out into the space without them being perfectly formed. Just by trying to put things into words, they're never fully accurate. Anything you say verbally is never fully the truth or accurate because the truth isn't a verbal truth. Whenever you try and minimize something and put it into words, you immediately lose a lot of the information because the English language in particular, it cannot communicate all the information. No language can. Sanskrit maybe can communicate a lot more of celestial insights because there are a lot of words in Sanskrit that don't exist in other languages for refined and unrefined states of higher states of consciousness. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but even then it's still lost. And so know that we're always communicating non-verbally. The words come and go, but there's a non-verbal communication. So as I communicate to you, my being wants you to have an easier time of it, to know that everything's going to be okay, to know that you're okay, to know that you don't need to be perfect, to know that we're all one on a subtle level, even though there are superficial differences. That's all contained within my being, so that when I communicate and I blabble on, and I can blabble on about snakes, and you can think, I don't like snakes, or oh wow, that's brave. And I can blabble on about narcissism or therapy or my celestial insights, but that's not really what's happening here. There's a lot of non-verbal communication as you listen. There is upgrades for me and you while you listen. And so things are not what they seem. Yes, this is a YouTube channel and you're listening and you might have an interest in meditation or interspecies communication or psychology. But maybe there's a part of you that wants to listen, that finds it's relaxing, that thinks it's listening about psychology, that thinks it's listening about nature. But there's a transfer of information between the two of us because we're one. There's a transfer of information. I'm listening to you, even though you're not physically here. Because when we meditate, we're listening to the collective. We're sensing what's going on for every single being in the entire planet. We're picking up what's going on. And then I might get an idea, oh, I'll do a video on listening. But if I'm listening in my meditation, then I'll get a download to do a video on a certain subject because you've given it to me. We're all interconnected. It's not like I'm here in my little head coming up with ideas from my own ego. That's nonsense. We are all one, we're all connected. Every idea is not a personal idea. We're so united and interconnected. And so we're never on our own. And what I would like to do in this video is to upgrade our understanding of what listening actually is and how to connect with each other's souls on the deepest level so that profound change can occur. So big ideas can come in the space, in the listening space. So changes can spontaneously happen. So people can just feel like they are okay. And so if I have a client and they come and they sit in front of me, I can just listen and they can talk and they can come up with answers just from me not interfering and holding a very charged listening space. And they can sort it out just by talking it out as if they're talking to themselves with me listening. Sometimes I might get inspired to ask a question that triggers them on a little journey, and while I listen to their answer, or I might suggest, oh, have you thought about it this way? Does that resonate with you? We never say, it is this. You've got it wrong. That's a very arrogant thing to do. We also have blind spots. The listener and the person being listened to both have blind spots. It's a co-creation. So if there are any suggestions or ideas, it's not like finger wagging advice. It's like, oh, I've noticed that you said that, but then earlier you said this, and they might be different. Which one do you feel is the truth for you right now? Or maybe they're both true at different times. You tell me. So, whenever telling people how it actually is, they come to their conclusions of how it actually is by themselves just by having a listening space provided for them. There isn't a hierarchy. The person that's listening isn't the boss. The person that's speaking isn't the boss. It can switch. One person's listening, the other person's talking. But as long as there's an equality and an ability to spot each other's blind spots or to be open to change, then this dynamic space where both parties get upgraded because each are seeing things that the other is not seeing or bringing information into the space that the other's not seeing or not gaining access to. And you kind of shimmy up into a higher state of consciousness together. And if you are with a coach or a therapist or a family member or a friend, and they're doing this, they're creating an inequality in the space. Like, I know more than you, I'm more intelligent than you are not okay, you need to listen to me. That doesn't create evolutionary changes. That creates dissonance, that creates a lack of unity. Change happens in unity. Change happens when people can fully be themselves without being shamed or judged, can go through a process without worrying that they're going to be thrown out or thought ill of. You have to allow people to try out things, to say things, to maybe get angry and to swear and to do whatever they need to like vent, because stress is held in the body and stress sometimes needs to come out in the form of shouting or screaming or just purging the nonsense. And to have somebody who stays firm in the space, holding compassion for that other person, knowing they're going to be okay, knowing it's just a stress release is very, very powerful and beautiful. And so I really hope that we can stop shutting down our heart space to other people because they're de stressing. We're in a time in history where the whole world is de stressing, where nothing can hide, where everybody's childhood trauma, fears, insecurities, misunderstandings, lack of compassion for others, which ultimately is lack of compassion for oneself, all is coming up to the surface to be cleared out. And it can get messy because when we see other people's junk and it triggers our junk, we can start shutting down our heart space because it's just too much. And we don't want to do that. We want to understand that it's okay. It's part of being human. It's not easy being human. When you land in a human body, it's painful. It's painful to be human because you're dealing with a mind that is coming up with a lot of coping strategies for not understanding its unification with everything and dealing with other people that are not in a unified state of consciousness, that have fallen from a unified state of consciousness into this the idea of separateness in a human body. And when you're separate, or you believe that you're separate from something else, you can do terrible things to other people and ultimately yourself because you don't realize that we're all one. And so it can become a very lonely place being a human, being surrounded by people that are self destructive ultimately. And because we're so interconnected with everyone and we all feel each other at all times, whether we're aware of it or not, some of it gets stored. We're also connected to everybody else. Whatever happens to somebody else happens to us, is stored within our own nervous system, is compartmentalized within our own nervous system. There is no such thing as a separate human. When you go and you see homeless people, when there's wars in the world, that is happening to us. Even though we appear to be separate, we're picking up on the stress in the collective. We know it's happening. And so everything happens to us. Everything that happens to another person happens to us. I'll repeat that because it's quite a profound idea for some people. Everything that happens to other people happens to us at some point in time. We're going to have to feel it. And it might be felt in the form of, oh, I've got OCD, or I've got a personality disorder, or I've got stress, or I've got anxiety, or I've got depression, or I'm going through an existential crisis, or something's just not feeling okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You're feeling everything that's going on in the world, and some of it leaks through into your system and manifests as, oh my goodness, I don't feel well, I'm sick, or heartbreak, or bipolar disorder, or complex PTSD, or, I mean, there is an understanding that nobody gets away with anything because we're all so interconnected. Nobody gets away with anything. If you do something bad to somebody else, you don't get away with it. And so knowing how interconnected we are can help us listen to other people because ultimately we're listening to ourselves. When you're listening to another person, you're listening to yourself, because even though they appear separate, they're mirroring what's going on in society, and every feeling they have, whether it's disappointment, anger, frustration, love, happiness, confusion, whatever they're experiencing, you will experience at some time. Oh, I've got a little timer going off that you can't hear, which says, "Foodies, foodies, Chandramuni Chaya." They're my cats, and it drops the little food in the bowl. It goes off at 12. It always makes me happy to listen to it, because if we listen to other people, we can start, and other beings, it can be animals, it doesn't have to be humans. We should listen to everything, plants, animals, the environment. If we listen, we can start intuiting and instinctually knowing what they need. And if we have the ability to give them what they need, that helps us, because we're also interconnected. So if you have a dog, for example, and you're like watching and listening to your dog, and he starts to scratch, and you're like, then you go online and you find some remedy, some herbal thing that you can wash him in or give him to stop him scratching. That really helps you, because helping somebody else helps you, because we're so interconnected. And giving to others, helping others, listening, preempting their needs, responding to their needs, changes the entire world. You don't want to live in a world where nobody feels seen or listened to, where other people's needs are just not important, where your needs and your world is here and everybody else is unimportant, because you're interconnected. When you are able to feel connected to your pets, feel connected to your family, feel connected to your friends, feel connected to your community, feel connected to your animals and birds outside and worms in the soil and everything, trees in your garden, or any plants as you walk around. When you feel connected, the heart space opens, and you will feel like everything's going to be okay. And so if you help an animal, if you help your friend, if you help your family, if you help anybody else, if you're listening, so you know how to help, listening enables you to know how you can help, then it heals the whole world. It heals you. It's very healing for other people and the environment. And that is how to get to a happy and united space. You're never going to feel contented or happy or successful if you are a separate individual and don't feel interconnected. It's just not going to happen. And creating a listening space in your life, time for other people, time to listen to your pets, time to listen to nature, time to listen to other people, changes everything. It's so rewarding, and I encourage everyone to give it a go. So the next time you're with your friend, just listen to them. Notice if there's a part of yourself that's like, they're blowing up their life, or I don't think they should be doing that. Unless they ask you, what do you think? Don't just then steamroll and say you're doing that wrong. Just listen. They'll work it out. Just be there. We need to be there for one another, more than ever right now. We need to come together no matter what our differences are, no matter what our socio-economic differences are, no matter what our religious differences are, no matter what our belief system differences are, no matter whatever the political differences are. Everybody comes together, listens to one another, and then creative solutions can arise, and the world's just going to be a better place. You can't you can't resolve conflict without being able to listen. Wars happen because people are not able to listen, because they have agendas and they're afraid, and they give up too soon. Don't give up on people. Keep listening. Don't give up. I'm from England and India, and I grew up in England at a time where the IRA were bombing us a lot in England, the Irish Sinn Féin bombers. And Mo Mowlam at the time, she created a listening space, and she was listening. She didn't say, "Oh my God, we just have to kill all of the IRA. We have to just stop listening to them and just attack and attack and attack, or just create a media frenzy around it." She listened to Sinn Féin. She spoke with Sinn Féin. They were bombing us a lot. And the situation resolved. A creative solution arose, and we don't get bombed anymore by Sinn Féin because of the listening space. Even though people are angry on side A and people are angry on side B, and they dehumanize each other so that they can't listen, it just creates war that goes on and on and on and never gets resolved. The only way to resolve anything really like that is through learning how to listen and just being open and not giving up, and knowing that a creative solution will arise within the listening space. Never give up. There's always a creative solution to everything. Listening, keep the communication open, and just see what arises, because you get the intelligence. The intelligence comes in. You don't have to sort it out yourself. Things can just get sorted out. We don't have to bear the burden of figuring it out ourselves individually. Things are just communicated spontaneously within the space. So, listening is a divine tool. It's a cosmic tool. It's a sacred tool. It is essential for the survival of the human species. It is essential for the survival of family units so that they can take care of children and raise healthy adults that are not damaged. Because when partners aren't able to listen to each other, that becomes very dysfunctional and blows up. And we know that children become broken adults when the family unit blows up. And it's very difficult to heal adults that have been very traumatized. It's a big job. I do it. I I'm in it every day in my therapy room, and I have huge compassion because it's just not easy and it's very painful, and it it's not necessarily something that we need to continue doing. We don't need to continue not listening to each other and creating damaged children that then become damaged adults that then can't listen. Listening is essential for peace. It's essential for our human survival, our happiness. So I pray that we all learn to listen, and whatever we need to do to learn how to listen, I pray that we learn and do that. Thank you for listening.